Hello, I'm Hugh Hewitt. It's Friday, and there's a lot of news, and I want to get to the key thing for you is the appointment of David Sachs, about whom you might not know anything, but I'll tell you about David Sachs because your world will be shaped by artificial intelligence, your world going forward. It's even now undergoing a revolution, which is why I've sold all my Palantir because I'm going to interview some Palantir people. I didn't want to conflict. I've sold all my Amazon. All I've got left is Microsoft and mutual funds. So I have no dog in this fight. But artificial intelligence is going to change everything. And right now we've got law professors regulating it like Lena Khan. And Donald Trump has gone out and picked David Sachs to come in and be the AI czar. David Sachs has been a guest on this program before. Hawks won't like him on those issues, but he's very personable and very smart, and he will know AI. And I have been reflecting on the difference between Donald Trump filling up with all this big tech entrepreneurial talent. You start with Elon Musk and you add in Vivek Ramaswamy, then you go get Doug Burgum, who's Silicon Valley, then you add in David Sachs. And already your talent level has gone off the charts compared to Team Biden and the hapless Pete Buttigieg, and then can you name anybody else? And they're not afraid. It's the old A's hire A's, D's hire E's, or F's. And it's on full display right now with Donald Trump's ongoing appointment. Pete Hegseth is doing fine, by the way. Do not buy into the attempt to assassinate Pete online. That's not happening. He's doing exactly what nominees have to do, which is fight back and fight hard. And I thought the endorsement by Senator Kramer yesterday was a very strong one. And we'll continue to see how that plays out over the weekend. But I'm feeling very confident about Pete right now. Wasn't at the beginning of the week, but I was gone. I couldn't really read all night long about what's going on. The rest of the nominees are great. Kosh is going to get confirmed. Kosh Patel is going. And I do not know either of these guys except to say hello to Pete on the air. I have no dog in this hunt. Don't want any job. Don't need anything. However, we need the Pentagon to work and the FBI to be overhauled. We need both of those things to happen. I'm very happy with both nominees. But I'm excited about the David Sachs nomination announced by the president on Truth Social last night, President-elect, because Sachs brings another big tech person. It's sort of New Dealer kind of stuff. When FDR blew into town in 1932 in the middle of a depression, he just basically brought every smart person he could, but he bought them from Harvard and Yale and the Ivy Leagues. And they aren't really smart people, they're academics. And academics are different from entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs fix things. Entrepreneurs start things. Entrepreneurs turn things around, and we can't have enough of them. It's great news. There's some not so great news. Let me start with the bulletin. You know, I'm a sucker for a pandemic story. Patient in isolation at University Hospital St. John Medical Center in Westlake, Ohio, after arriving from Tanzania with flu-like symptoms. Now, I don't know why Cleveland.com decided a patient with the flu needed a front page story, but it's there. And I always try and let you, I'm first to the goal line with, oh, really? Another one? And we've done this drill in the 25 years of this show. We've done this drill 4 or 5 times. One time it became COVID. One time it became Ebola, but that was cabined. And the other ones didn't become anything. But we'll keep an eye on it. Number 2, in Syria, I don't have a scorecard, so I can't tell you who the players are. I think ISIS is marching on. They began Aleppo. They got all of Aleppo sealed up. Then they went down to Hama. They got Hama. Now they're headed to Homs. And below Homs is Aleppo. And the Times of Israel has a story this morning. Syrian rebels take Hama, Israel preparing for possible change of regime. Now, I have no idea. I listened to Dan Senor yesterday on Call Me Back. And someone really needs to explain this from the perspective of our allies in the region. Now, Turkey is an ally. Israel is very much an ally. Now, Israel and Turkey don't like each other. But what does the UAE think about this? They are Sunni radicals, right, going down to take out the Alawite Assad dictatorship. And the Syrian civil war murdered 500,000 people, displaced 2 million people. Syria is still recovering. And the Kurds are over on the eastern part of the country. They're our friends. Turkey is kind of tied in with this ISIS group that's marching down the highway to Damascus. and I don't know. I do know this. Last night in Australia, a synagogue was burned down in Melbourne. And I do think big things are going on unleashed by the barbarism of 10/7, the repercussions of which continue to wash across the world. Russia is with its back against the wall in Syria as well as fully committed in Ukraine. And weird stuff is going on in South Korea where the martial law, not martial law period is going to end up with the impeachment of their president. But there's weird stuff going on in the DMZ. The next 50 days. Meanwhile, Joe Biden's asleep in Angola, and everyone saw the picture. Let me also comment on the murder of Mr. Thompson, Brian Thompson, in New York City. I've walked by that hotel 100 times. It's on the way to 30 Rock when I would stay in Midtown and go there. And usually early in the morning for Morning Joe. All right, that's when I used to do Morning Joe back in my NBC days. And I always felt the safest that New York is of course in the hours before it wakes up. After it's been out partying, it's just like completely boring and stone cold dead. And so this fellow walks up and executes Mr. Thompson. And the reaction online is deeply ill. People who take joy in the assassination of someone because he happens to be a healthcare executive, it could be Russian bots. It could be Chinese communist bots. I don't know. I never read the comments on any column I write. But it's been pretty sick. Very, very ill. The New York Times, a torrent of anger for health insurance industry follows CEO's killing. There are a few people who put their names on this crank stuff. And those people are cranks. And by the way, perfectly acceptable to dance on the grave of a father and a good guy by all accounts. Under the First Amendment, you can do that. But God have mercy on your soul when you show up at the gates. Online sleuths are trying to catch the United Healthcare CEO's killer. It's not a paid assassin. As the police are out there saying, there aren't professional hitmen. That doesn't exist. There are mob guys who do wet work. There are spies who do wet work. This is not a professional hitman. How do I know that? New York Post story this morning. They've tracked him to Atlanta where he came to New York on a bus. So they'll find the guy eventually. And eventually it will turn out to be someone, it looks like someone who will be upset by a family member's care or lack of care. That's what the guess is. Could also just turn out to be a left-wing nutter. Because right-wing nutters don't assassinate healthcare executives on the streets of New York in the middle of the night or the early morning. It's not the middle of the night. They just don't do that. All right, coming up today, I have Ben Domenech for Week in Review. We'll talk about Pete Hegseth. We'll talk about David Sachs. I'm going to play you a little bit of my David Sachs interview from last year because Ben Domenech will be along for the Week in Review. In the meanwhile, Pete Hegseth says cut number 3.
Good afternoon, everybody. I just want to relay that it has been a great week. It's been a great day. Great day yesterday. On the Hill meeting with senators, earning every vote. I have a great deal of respect for this process. Advice and counsel have gotten great advice. We don't take anything for granted. The conversations have been robust, candid at times, with great questions on policy, personality, everything. So we're going to earn those votes. We're fighting all the way through the tape. We're grateful to have the president's support because his vision for this Department of Defense is to bring it back to its core capacity of deterring our enemies and, if necessary, defeating those enemies. And that means ultimately putting war fighting at the middle of what the Pentagon does. No more social justice, politically correct approaches to how we fight and conduct wars. This is about lethality, meritocracy, readiness, war fighting, and accountability. And I'm grateful that President Trump has bestowed this opportunity on me. This process has been a very good one, despite all the noise on the outside. Had a great interview with Megyn Kelly yesterday, and will continue to answer questions specifically to senators, who are the ones that deserve answers to every question they have. And in every office we've stood in, we've welcomed that opportunity. It has been a great week. It's a process that's ongoing, and we look forward to finishing it.
This is how you win. That's how you win a nomination battle. Don't go belly up. Don't hide from reporters. Don't talk to reporters. Tell them what you want them to know and carry forward. Senators see that. Senators hear that. Of course, senators listen to this show. Good week for Pete Hegseth. Everybody else is doing fine. The David Sachs announcement makes me very happy indeed. I'm Hugh Hewitt reminding you this is the time of year I sponsor Angel Tree, and Angel Tree sponsors a drive to ask you to please donate $30 to get one child a present from their mom or their dad who is incarcerated. Angel Tree has been doing this for 3 decades. They're without any kind of parallel in the world of prison ministry, and they bring Christmas to children. Now, there are thousands of church patios on which Angel Tree volunteers appear, and they accept $30 donation, and they tell you about the child. They will even tell you if it's close to a prison fellowship headquarter, who the prisoner is, who the child is, and what they want. You know, James wants a football from their dad, Joe, who's in this jail. And that feels great. You can't know that unless you're on a church patio. And if that's you, just head to HughHewitt.com. Doesn't matter that you won't know the prisoner or the child or the present. Just know that you will be making possible their connection with Angel Tree and giving us a child who is otherwise not going to have much Christmas at all, a connection with their mom or their dad and something to celebrate. Maybe a football to throw around, maybe a doll to play with. I don't know, but it makes children happy. It does bring Angel Tree into the life of that child, and that goes on and on. Give a listen to one of our volunteers, Mark, tell us. It's a prisoner. Here's Mark.
And I remember at one point towards the end of my prison, me getting out and then some of my family members saying, we've been praying for you and we're glad that you're home. Never give up on somebody that's behind a prison wall. And I believe that if we pour love into those children, if they have an opportunity, they are going to be pillars of our community.
So you see, Change a Children's Christmas is the name of the banner at HughHewitt.com. Just click on that. $90 takes care of 3 kids. $30 one kid, $150 5 kids. Thank you very much in advance. Let me turn to markets in the morning market report brought to you by our friends at AmericanFederal.com. I talked to Nick Grovich yesterday. Year end is busy. I am not surprised. There are 2 headlines here which bear on the market report, which is sponsored by American Federal. If you're going to buy or sell gold, you do it with Nick Grovich. You call up Nick at 1-800-221-7694. 1-800-221-7694. 1-800-221-7694. And you tell Nick what you want to do. Maybe you have 3 grandkids and you want to give them an ounce each, a Krugerrand each. That is a great Christmas present. They can't blow it on video games or prop bets on a gambling app. They usually have to save it, or their mom and dad saves it, or it's just a great way to diversify your wealth. What is going on in the United States is unusual. Investors pour $140 billion into U.S. stock funds after Trump election victory, according to the Financial Times today. Bets incoming and administration will enact pro-growth agenda, spurs rush into Wall Street equities. The Wall Street Journal's story by James McIntosh, is the wildly overvalued stock market doomed? Yes, but maybe not yet. No, it's not doomed. Stock markets go up, stock markets go down. You transition as you get older from more volatile stocks into more guaranteed income, but you don't get out of the stock market because someone writes a story like that. But you do diversify into gold and dirt, and everyone ought to be as much. If you've got wealth, you ought to be diversified. And if you want to start with gold, head over to AmericanFederal.com. Call 1-800-221-7694. The Dow was off 0.5% yesterday. The S&P off 0.19. The NASDAQ off 0.17. Gold is at $2,657 an ounce. The 10-year Treasury at $4.18 because the 10-year Treasury reflects what we all know to be true, which is that it's still expensive to get a house in the United States. It's going to take Trump 6 to 8 months of work to get interest rates down. But get lined up to get your house now, but get your gold today from Nick Grovich. 1-800-221-7694. Inside the Beltway, the chatter is all about Is Team Biden really going to issue preemptive pardons? They're not constitutional to begin with. Moreover, if you accept one, what are you saying about yourself? But outside the Beltway, there's a lot of attention being paid to the assassination of the healthcare executive, Mr. Thomas, in New York City. New York Post is all over it. The New York Times is all over it. It's not a big message to the world. It's a crazed killer. It's not Son of Sam. It's someone with a grudge. The penciling or the inking on the bullets of anti-healthcare industry slogans tells you all you need to know. Someone is disgruntled with the healthcare decisions of an insurance company. Everybody hates insurance companies, but everybody hates the media and everybody hates everybody, so there's no reason to go around shooting people. And the whole story that will be told, because the killer will be caught. They have a picture, they have a ticket, they have a travel, they got lots of video everywhere. They will find the killer. When we find the killer, I hope he is alive so he can explain how he got to this twisted result. I'll talk with Ben Domenech about it. I do want to tell you about non-twisted results. I'm very happy that David Sachs is coming to town because big tech talent matters. But there's talent in town as well. One of them is Kevin Roberts. Dr. Kevin Roberts runs the Heritage Foundation. He's written a brand new book, Dawn's Early Light. Dawn's Early Light explains the conservative movement as it stands at the end of 2024, at the beginning of Trump 2.0. And if you read Dawn's Early Light, you will understand the breadth and depth of the problem. I wrote about this yesterday for Fox News. The only three agencies I know well, I know five agencies well. I know the National Endowment for the Humanities well. I know the Office of Personnel Management well. I help run both of those, so they're still the same bureaucracies, don't change. I know EPA. I know the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. I know the Army Corps of Engineers. Nothing works. Nothing works the way the private sector works. Yesterday, I had to call USAA. Like every other person in America, I waited to the end of open season to change my drug plan. And USAA just did it. They just got it done because it's USAA, which is the greatest company as far as I can tell in America. And USAA just got it done. Took about 30 minutes. The wait line was long because a lot of people wait to the end of open season. And I think to myself, how come USAA can run this, but Medicare, you can't get a phone call, Social Security, just stupid stuff. Trying to get a new Social Security card is a stupid, crazy thing. True ID. They require more stuff than God. I'm in every system, right? So you would think, why not just give me the driver's license? But no, that's not, nothing works. But Dawn's Early Light tells you how it can be turned around. So go and get it. Our sponsor is the Heritage Foundation. They have long been sponsors. We love them for that. David Sachs was my guest a year and a couple of months ago. He's our new AI, and we need an AI czar. We need someone who actually knows Silicon Valley. He is a Ukraine skeptic. I am not. I am a Ukraine hawk. That's fine. He's not going to do Ukraine policy. He's going to do artificial intelligence policy, and I think that's just grand. Here's a little bit of my conversation from last summer with David Sachs.
I like the First Man in Rome series, actually.
We are soulmates.
Yeah.
Why is that not on audiobook? You can only read them twice. I could listen to them endlessly and get the pronunciations done. But that's a 7-book series, which is fabulous. It's all Plutarch and Tacitus made real. So that's a very good, interesting.
Yeah, I love that series. Read it. It goes from Marius to Caesar to Augustus. That whole sort of last century, the Roman Republic.
It ends with Augustus. Yeah, and after that, if one goes off, you can read further. But historical fiction does a very good job. I'm curious. Have you read any of Churchill, like the 3-volume Manchester book?
Yes, Churchill? I was going to mention that. The Alone book, the one from, was it like 1930?
David Sachs had me there. All right, he's read the First Man in Rome series, which is really Plutarch for dummies. And I love the First Man in Rome series, so I'm calling myself a dummy, not David Sachs. And then he likes Alone, which of the 3 volumes by Manchester. Manchester did not write the 3rd volume. He did some clumps, some preparatory research and outline, but he did not finish it. He died before he finished it. It's a fabulous 3-volume biography. and Alone is one of the most important books. And I think that David Sachs has read that. I find it refreshing that big tech people read outside of big tech. I'm not a big all-in listener. A lot of techies love, a lot of crypto people love it. I don't do crypto. I don't have an opinion on crypto. I am neither pro nor con crypto. All I am is pro growth and pro productivity and pro energy, because energy is freedom. Yesterday I wrote about how you cut Gordian knots that are tied by federal agencies. David Sachs is going to come in and the idiocy at the FTC. Now, Donald Trump appointed antitrust czar yesterday. They'll be the assistant attorney general in charge of antitrust, and he warned big tech that they don't get to run the world. Then he turns around and hires David Sachs because, in fact, we need big tech to run some parts of the world, that which concerns AI, because we both have to win the AI race, and we can't let AI destroy our lives. It's not actually an easy problem set. The last thing you needed with Lena Khan, chairman of the FTC, nice lady, I'm sure, Yale law professor, zero experience, no experience in the real world doing anything. And the FTC just has thrown spaghetti at a wall for 4 years. Nothing has happened, and we don't have any AI guidelines. We still don't know what the industry is doing, but we have ChatGPT 5.0, 6.0, 7.0. We have OpenAI and Microsoft teamed up with Anduril yesterday to build new weapon systems. That's good. But I would still like to have a really smart person overseeing this, because to me the answer is, hey, AI, we get to invest in every startup, we being the American Sovereign Wealth Fund. We get to invest in every startup. We get to have a seat at every board table. That person will be in the Pentagon, and you're going to share all our secrets, or you're not going to get into this business, because it's all national security. It's all about protecting the United States from the CCP, which is in the race for AI. I am very happy about this, the David Sachs appointment. He could go to the Pentagon. He could go to the agency. Both the Pentagon and the agency are concerned with artificial intelligence. It's a great, great choice. Meanwhile, over in liberal land, all they do is talk about pardons. And I got to tell you, it's sort of crazy. Cut number 13 is Kate Bedingfield on CNN talking about this pardon story. Cut number 13.
President Biden sparked a wave of bipartisan backlash this week, announcing the sweeping pardon of his son Hunter. But according to new Politico reporting, it may not be the only pardon that Biden grants. Jonathan Martin reports this. President Joe Biden's senior aides are conducting a vigorous internal debate over whether to issue preemptive pardons to a range of current and former public officials who could be targeted with President-elect Donald Trump's return to the White House. One House Democrat already has some ideas about who should be on that list.
Jack Smith's name is on my list. Liz Cheney's name is on my list. I think that they all should be preemptively pardoned because I think there are people who Trump may bring into this government who will go after these people in a serious way, and there's no need to subject them to that.
The panel is back. Kate Bedingfield, how real do you think this is, and how important does the White House
Nobody actually
see
knows.
this?
Now, let's just stop right there, Casey. Nobody really knows. Why are we talking about it? Because there's been one pardon. It's for Hunter Biden. Nobody has read the Scarcy opinion, as far as I can tell, in the Beltway that blasted Joe Biden and completely eviscerated the idea. I do not cover hypothetical stories about potential pardons. All I want you to know is that they're not paying attention to David Sachs because they don't understand artificial intelligence, and they're run by kids. And they don't really know how to talk about the talent gap between Team Biden and Team Trump, which is immense. The Team Trump talent is enormous. The Team Biden talent has never been there, and whatever was there has left long ago, and we have the president falling asleep in Africa. And they're talking about pardons. Why are we talking about pardons? Because the news media does not know what to do. They have no idea what to do about investing 2 years in Donald Trump as a threat to democracy. It turns out he's not a threat to democracy. Pam Bondi isn't a threat to democracy. Pete Hegseth isn't a threat to democracy. Doug Burgum at Interior isn't a threat to democracy. Elise Stefanik at the United Nations is not a threat to democracy. You know what a threat to democracy is? Iran. Headline over at the Times of Israel right now. Top Iranian official, Tehran likely to send missiles, drones to Syria to help Assad. Of course they are. The Alawites are a sect of Shia. The Shia crescent runs from Tehran all the way through to the Hezbollah garrison that has been pushed back to Litani. So and they've got an outpost over in Yemen, that's Shia as well. 90% of the Arab world is Sunni, 10% is Shia. The Shias own Tehran. They want nukes. They have a 1,300-year-old civil war within Islam that is very difficult to understand, hard to break through. All you need to know is that the bad guys in Iran want to help Syria's Assad stop an ISIS-like group from marching on Damascus. Israel has a problem. Our job should be to support Israel right now with everything that can fly before either new reinforcements from Iran show up in Lebanon or the ISIS killers get to Damascus. That's what we ought to be doing. The poet laureate of the Hugh Hewitt Show. Hello, Joe.
Hello, Hugh. You know, this time of year, there are some things more important than pardons and presidential nap time. At last, I've come to understand a sentence worth the stating. In every aspect of our lives, we are a people waiting. We stand in line to travel, and for a cup of joe, we plant a seed and count the weeks to see the seedling grow. The game is on at 5 o'clock, and still it's only 3. Can you all hear the tick and tock, or is it only me? We wait 9 months until we're born, can't wait until we're grown. Complete anticipation is the only state we've known. We wait for beds to open, the nurse to make her rounds. Living in the moment's not as simple as it sounds. We look for our reflection just as the mirror shatters. Time is life's most precious gem, the only one that matters. We wait for the Messiah, who says, "Please wait again," as yearly we're reminded when we wish goodwill to men. We know the apprehension of every setting sun. Always there's a question, will this day be the one? We're sailing toward tomorrow, just hold that tiller steady. We're very good at waiting. It's time for getting ready. That's Advent by Tarzana Joe.
Oh, I like that, Joe. I didn't see the title coming, but you're right. It's time for getting ready. Advent is posted, I assume, at tarzanajoe.com. And
It is.
how are the Christmas requests for Christmas poems coming? Are you getting flooded?
Well, I say this regularly, but this was the busiest week in Tarzana Joe poetry history. I woke up Monday morning with a full inbox. And thank you listeners, all you retirees, birthday party people, late wedding in the year people. Very busy.
And
So
Christmas party
let's start
people.
working on those Valentine's Day poems now, okay?
Head over to tarzanajoe.com for both the Advent poem of today and for the Get a Poem button, or just send Joe an email at tarzanajoe@reagan.com. The more details you put in, the easier his work is, the better the poem. tarzanajoe@reagan.com. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Hugh.
I am worried, thank you, Joe. I am worried that I can't find any news on the continuing resolution. Now, government runs out of money on December 20th, and we don't want Democrats to have too much control over what happens after January 3rd. Republicans run everything after January 3rd, so I would prefer that they do a CR that gets us to January 5, so that there are 48 hours for the Republicans to come in and do something good about the budget. There's also national defense authorization, but we have a sponsor here, Conservatives for Lower Health Care Costs, and they are watching for one thing, and I want you to stay abreast of it as well, windfall for Big Pharma. Head over to pharmawindfall.com to get the details. And look in every CR story, every spending story, every story about House and Senate machinations, whether or not there is so-called delinking in it. Delinking is code for let's give billions to Big Pharma. That's what delinking means. They're trying to make, Big Pharma is trying to steal a march on pharmacy benefit managers, and pharmacy benefit managers can be like CVS or anyone that you get your drugs from, and they negotiate with Big Pharma. Big Pharma just wants to win, and Big Pharma wants $30 billion plus in a Big Pharma bailout. And Big Pharma has done this to us before. Never forget, Big Pharma sold you down the river with Obamacare. The cost of Obamacare has been extraordinary. It rises every year. It's an entitlement. It goes up, up, up. It's going to bankrupt this country. Eventually, we have to do something about it, but not right now. Right now, we need productivity and growth, and we need it within the first 90 days. Looks like Speaker Johnson, incoming Majority Leader Thune are working on a big package for the budget and reconciliation, and it should be going out of the gates fast and immediately. But in the meantime, go to pharmawindfall.com, pharmawindfall.com, and join the urgent fight to stop billions more going to Big Pharma. Let's buy their drugs. Let's not write them checks. Finally, Christmas present alert for those of you who know a young man between 21 and 35, gift them a trip to the Wild Adventure. The Young Guns at the Wild Adventure is really fabulous. People have told me for years it's an extraordinary experience. I know a few people who've gone. I've heard from people who have sent their friends, their sons, their brothers, their loved ones. You visit twa.us. Let's roll one of the tapes of the kind of people that you'll see at the Young Guns. They're talking, but we haven't got the sound of them.
Valley in Central California.
I'm from Los Angeles, California.
And where are you standing now?
I am at the Wild Adventure Young Guns trip.
Montana.
Rainbow Lake.
And what's one of your biggest highlights?
Oh man, I caught an awesome fish. It was one of the best experiences of my life, just the way it hit the line. Everything happened all at once. It was just beautiful, and everyone was cheering on. It was fun. It was awesome.
So Rainbow Lake has recovered since I fished it out, apparently. But if you want to give a gift of a lifetime to your son, your husband, your brother, send them to twa.us. It's expensive, but it's heavily subsidized by Jan's Genera. Go to Jan's book, by the way, Jan's Books, to get making big talk, turning small talk into big talk. But head to twa.us to scholarship or reserve a place at Rainbow Lake this coming summer for anyone 21 to 35. Ben Domenech joins me as he does most Fridays when we are lucky. Good morning, Ben. Will I see you at the Scottish Parade on Saturday?
I do intend to swing by the Scottish Parade, at least for a little bit. It's a fantastic tradition here in Alexandria, and it's a question of how cold it's going to be if the girls can withstand it or not.
Yeah, I'm not taking the grandkids, I don't think.
Yeah,
if we do, it'll be like 5 minutes
lately, and so I might not risk it. But that's the wonderful thing about this time of year, when the cutest people in your life are just bringers of doom and destruction on a regular basis, which you can probably hear in my voice a little bit.
Yeah, the Doodah Parade in California is the closest thing I can tell to people to the Scottish Parade. It isn't really the most well-organized thing you've ever seen, and there isn't really any kind of a float, but the kids get candy and everybody loves it. It's just kind of weird. Ben, there's a lot to talk about. I want to begin with an overnight announcement by President-elect Trump that David Sachs is going to be the AI czar. Now, I've interviewed David once. I don't listen to the All In podcast. You know what they say. The Beltway is Hollywood for ugly people. Well, Silicon Valley is Washington, D.C. for rich people who know tech and not much else. I'm very thrilled, though, that David Sachs is going to be providing guidance and direction for AI. What do you think?
Look, I think that this is going to be one of those issues that this administration is going to lean into particularly hard, given the level of connection that they have with Silicon Valley. And I think that was a big part of the reason why so many people in Silicon Valley who care not just about their businesses, but about the future of AI, and particularly America's interest in not allowing other nations to outspend, out-research, and out-game the system, compared to us, was so critical. And I think that's one of the reasons why people like David Sachs were so vocal. And I think that, this is obviously, the president rewarding someone who had been an early supporter. I think it's a good and beneficial thing. Look, the biggest concern that I have about this, and you probably share it, Hugh, and, talking to people like Mike Gallagher, they obviously share this concern as well, is that we are seeing China, really outpace us in recent years in ways that we don't fully understand yet. Certainly it's something we're all paying attention to, but it's something that we can't be allowed to happen in such a critical time in our nation's foreign policy interests in that region. To have China basically, picking up the pace to such a degree that we can't catch them. And I think that that's something that is very much a real threat and possibility. So having someone in that job who knows what's going on is really critical.
Now, Ben, I've already quoted it this morning. A's hire A's, D's hire E's. The talent upgrade that we are getting moving from Biden to Trump. And let's just illustrate it with Lena Khan, law professor, Yale, at the FTC, David Sachs, big tech entrepreneur, PayPal founder, all-in podcaster. That kind of talent upgrade is what we need in national defense. And we really, I do not agree with David on things like Ukraine funding, but I am very glad to have someone who actually understands the definitions dealing with AI and our big tech integration into DoD, not somebody who is a Harvard Law School faculty member. That is not what we need. I'm reminded of
one other thing, Hugh, about this is that I think it's very good to have people who are already established within these fields as opposed to people who are thinking about their next job, which has been what we've had in so much of defense for far too long, is just people thinking about which board they want to be on after they leave. And that's not something that we want in those jobs anymore. We can't afford to have it anymore. And I think that this is a good example of the kind of person who doesn't, he's already made his millions. He doesn't care about where he goes next. He wants to have an impact on policy, and that's a good
There's
thing.
Billions. And this is, to me, I've read a lot of New Deal history, and FDR basically drafted the entire Harvard and Yale faculty to come to town in 1932. Trump is, draining the billionaire world. Everyone's going to have a job. The EOB is going to be worth more money than many countries when they come for their once-a-week visit to their EOB office. What do you think, though? Does that generally reflect a Trump commitment to ideas and diversity, or is it just his donors?
I think it's a commitment to ideas and diversity. I think that, the fact that they happen to be his donors is something that, is neither here nor there. You're going to end up being aligned with someone. I keep hearing, people saying, well, he's picking all these yes men. And it's like, no, I don't think he's doing that at all. I think he's picking a wide variety of the ideological spectrum on the right, which includes a lot of different people and a lot of different backgrounds. And that's something that I think is going to pay dividends in terms of the way that this is a massive shift away from the ridiculousness that we've had to live through under Joe Biden over the past several years. And you're not going to have the kind of situation that you had under Biden where people just get away with not doing their jobs. Can you imagine someone like Alejandro Mayorkas lasting for a day under Donald Trump?
No.
It's just absurd. And so that's the kind of thing that I think we're going to see the results of it, and the American people can judge for themselves. But it's certainly a sea change in terms of the approach to naming people who aren't just political functionaries or hacks, but people who actually are tasked with doing really hard jobs.
Now, before I turn to Pete Hegseth and the other nominees that are mildly controversial, not Pam Bondi, not Doug Burgum, not John Ratcliffe, mildly, Kash Patel will get confirmed, not sure about Pete. But before I turn to that, in Syria right now, an ISIS-like group is marching from Aleppo through Hama on their way to Homs, and the next stop on that highway is Aleppo. Do we really want ISIS to win there? Assad is just the worst person in the world. At least he's tied for the gold. But do we want him thrown overboard?
No, I think that this is a lesson that we've taken from the past. And it brought to mind, by the way, a conversation that I witnessed several years ago between Benjamin Netanyahu and Daniel Pleka at the AEI dinner, where
smart.
he made the case that the simple fact is that ISIS believes in destruction in the region to a degree that Assad does not. He basically essentially said Assad's a bad guy, but he's in a box. And that is something that I think Americans have learned over the last several years is something that is preferable to having the kind of chaotic regime that would result from the success of ISIS and the success of these chaos ministers within the Muslims, within the Islamic State. And that's something that I think that we have to consider in this moment, which is to say, look, he's a dictator. He's horrible. He's one of the worst people in the world. I completely agree. At the same time, he doesn't have the kind of outside effects to our allies in the region that an Islamic State would if established there. And that's something that we have to factor into decisions. We have to be realistic about this, Hugh. And I think that the American people have learned that over the last several years, and the naivete of people who think that there's somehow some easy answer to questions like this has been exposed.
Now, I do see that Tehran, the IRGC, is rushing missiles, drones, and people to Damascus to help Assad. Yeah. We don't like Iran. Typically, the enemy of our enemy is our friend, but I'm not sure here. And I would really follow Netanyahu's lead. I wish I'd been at that conversation because Danny's very smart and Netanyahu very rarely opens up to American reporters. But yes. What do you think about Tehran resupplying Assad and whether or not that will change the Netanyahu calculation here?
I don't know. I don't know if it will, and I think that that's something that has to factor into this decision, particularly at this juncture, given the state of the Iranian regime. And so I think that the overall perspective that we have to have here is one of defending our allies' interests, particularly Israel, and one that is cognizant of the reality of the problem of facing lesser of two evils, as they say in Master and Commander. So it's one of these things that I think is unfortunate.
One of my favorite scenes in all of movies, by the way, is Russell Crowe, the lesser of two evils. Did the kid still have his arm at that point?
I believe so. I'm not sure he's lost it yet, but yes.
He plays an outsized role in the 21 novels, the Aubrey Maturin novels, and yes. The kid grows up with one arm, and did
you see this tease that they want to re-engage with this IP?
No, really?
Just about 2-3 weeks ago, when they were doing a round interview with some of the people over at the studio, there was very much an interest in re-engaging with the Master and Commander.
That Maturin is really one of the best characters in all literature, historical fiction. But I like Aubrey. Aubrey's kind of easy to cast, but Maturin is very difficult, very complex character. I'm rereading the Sharp stuff because I reread all the Aubrey Maturin books in the summer. So now I'm marching with Sharp and Patrick Harper.
Your capacity to read these books is amazing.
Listen. I'm listening to them. I recommend everyone to listen to them. And I do not spend my day doing whip counts on nominees. And I don't really believe any of the gossip sheets in town about whether Pete is up or down. But I do talk to senators, and the ones that I know are optimistic, but they may be shining me on. What do you think?
In terms of Pete's prospects, I am on the negative side of that. Unfortunately, I think that there's going to be enough votes that he is shaky on that are not going to be able to deliver this for President Trump. And that's one of the reasons why I think you've seen the floating of Ron DeSantis' name by the Wall Street Journal and by others. And what I will say though is it is a close situation.
That's what I mean. I think it is. Yeah.
Yes. This is nowhere near the Matt Gaetz situation, which was a situation where he was never going to get there. Like it was I'm not sure it was ever below double digits in terms of opposition. And so in this case, I think that, Pete has done yeoman's work in trying to convince people to come to his side. And, a big part of this too, I think, Hugh, is recency factor. A good bit of this is, stuff that happened in the, sort of 6-7 year window, which for those of us who know Pete, I've known him for 13 years. We all know that basically several years ago, he really matured and kind of, left aside youthful indiscretion in order to become, a better father, a better Christian, a better person. And that coincided, by the way, with him a few years later moving away from New York City to Nashville, just a better situation for him. And I'll say this, too, about him. He's someone who has never been anything but responsible around me, around my family members, around those, who I know. And he's both beloved by the the producer sector within Fox and everything else. And so I have nothing but positive things.
That actually matters a lot to me because people know people on sets. They do.
Yeah.
I don't believe any of the anonymous stuff. But when you're talent with a capital T, people know about it and they tell you about it. I know who talent with a capital T is at NBC, MSNBC. I knew it at CNN, and I know who you can trust. So I don't know Pete except on the air. And he's always impressed me. He's smart. I've read his books.
Sure.
He knows what he wants to get done. But I don't know him on the set. And you're telling me nothing but respectful.
Nothing but respect. And this is the thing. I've known people who worked at Fox and Friends over the last 6-7 years, who have, experienced that with him. Love Pete, and also, frankly, are people who know, the folks who, make people a little nervous, make people, uncomfortable or that kind of thing within the industry. And Pete's not one of those people. So look, this is the problem that he has. He did have a lot of indiscretions, I think, in the past. They were, various, you can weight them one way or the other, depending on who you trust. But I do think that he's making the case basically to people on Capitol Hill. I can be trusted. I can be a real asset to Donald Trump within this role.
Let me ask you, could he survive the hearing? I just remember the Kavanaugh hearings with trepidation.
That's the thing that, I'll be completely honest. I have been in rotational Friends of Pete conversations about this because that's exactly our concern. Can he go through a hearing and make a case for himself, a passionate case that allows him to, not just survive this, but, take on the job
and flourish.
Will have, and actually do the work in a way that he can be confident in. And, that's something that is so much about, his own attitude, his own perspective. I certainly think he's capable of doing that, but that could be the deciding factor in whether he succeeds or not.
You better talk to Mrs. Hegseth because it's going to be ugly. And I do believe, as I judge the online right, that would include you and me, it's rallied to him. But that's not enough. You can't have one Republican break off. All right, Ben, everybody comes to the Hugh Hewitt Show because they like to talk about budget resolutions and the reconciliation process. It's really exciting stuff.
The most gripping thing. Why don't we talk about the Detroit Lions instead? Or Jameis Winston. Can we talk about Jameis Winston?
Jameis Winston's kind of a Pete Hegseth story. He had trouble when he was a kid, then he turned it around, and now he's an inspiring leader. But let's go to budget and reconciliation because people got to know Donald Trump gets one big swing this year, and it needs the House and the Senate to agree on a budget, and then the budget's got to pass, and trailing bills have to fit within it, and they have to be revenue bills. That could be the tax cuts, that can be energy policy, it can be the border, it can be all of the above. Do you think that Team Trump is working with Team Johnson, with Team Thune, to get that done in a hurry? Because speed doesn't kill, speed thrills and turns around economies.
I absolutely think that they are, and I think that the indications are from Thune in particular that these are conversations that he's already been having in terms of his relationship. Obviously, the situation in the House is more fluid only because the margin is so much narrower than people thought it was going to be, aided in part by the fact that the president has picked some of these members to go into his administration. But it's also a situation where I think the Thune team has already been on the ball on this, and I think that they are well aware of the opportunity that they have and the limited opportunity that they have to get this right. And so, look, these are, as you and I have discussed in the past, the outcome of this election was set months ago. It really did not shift or change all that much in the last couple of months. And people, I think, in Washington, particularly in those jobs, have been operating under that assumption for a while. So I wouldn't be surprised to see something that is pretty impressive in terms of what the Republicans can put together. But it is, as you said, one swing in terms of their ability to get this right.
Now, the reality is the Republicans are going to get wiped out in 2026 unless the economy booms. The only way the economy booms is if they make the Trump tax cuts permanent to remove that uncertainty, and they open up drilling, development, housing, a whole bunch of different things, and they finish the border wall as the messaging thing. Those are the big three. And if we don't get the economy, do Republicans on the bell curve, meaning far left Republicans and far right Republicans, do they get that everybody loses if they don't get the budget reconciliation done?
I think that I hope that they do. They certainly should. It's one of these situations where, look, the American people elected Donald Trump in large part because they remember the Trump economy. They remember how it worked for them. They remember how things were, 4 years ago, and they would like to go back to that. They feel like there's a better possibility with him than with the current administration's policies, and that's why they put him and this Republican Senate, into office. That is something that is going to be tougher for them to deliver on than I think a lot of people assume. It's going to be hard because this sort of stuff doesn't just change overnight, and that's the kind of thing that I think that we in Washington need to be cognizant of in terms of the way that people are talking about it and the way that Republican senators are prioritizing it.
Yeah, they need to go so fast, Ben. For once, they got to act like a turnaround in the private sector, which
and
is
they joke about Mitch McConnell, and a turtle, but it's one of these situations where the Senate really is this giant tortoise. You mentioned Maturin before. It's this giant, turtle, slow-moving thing, that does not necessarily turn on a dime, and I think that that's going to be something that's going to be pretty hard for them. I do want to, I don't know how much time we have left, but I do want to talk a little bit about this New York situation.
Let's do that during the break. We're going to go to a break, and I do want to ask you about that, but let me conclude reconciliation with this.
Sure.
What would be a win in terms of the over-under on the date? We are 1 month removed from the election. Most of the cabinet is filled out. I don't think it's unrealistic to say you get 30 days, Congress, to pass the budget resolution. What do you think?
I don't think it's unrealistic at all. I think that's exactly what we should be aiming for. And to see that kind of happen, I mean, look, the last time that Donald Trump got elected, it was a shock. The contrast I wanted to set up there is that, like, this time around, people expected it. It was not it's not the same situation as it existed in 2016. And so because of that, we should be, expecting them to come in and hit the ground running, to get to have 100 days where they get a ton of stuff done, because that's going to set them up really. I think it's probably going to be determinative in whether that 26 wave backlash happens for the Democrats.
You get the whip hand out, John Thune and Mike Johnson, because the window is now. And when I'm in New York for television, I always stay in Midtown. And I've always thought the safest time to be in New York City is from 4 to 6 a.m. when you're walking to Morning Joe or Fox and Friends. Because there's nobody anywhere, right?
There's nobody there, yeah.
And so it's like...
the streets are completely empty. Yeah, I know you feel...
And the trash, the vendors aren't out yet. The hot dog smell is there. The dope is dissipated. But now... I don't think this is a hired hit killer. I don't think those people exist. I think they've got a bus ticket from Atlanta. What is going on here, and what's your reaction to it?
Well, my first reaction was shock, obviously, because this is not the kind of thing that you anticipate seeing, especially in, by the way, the most photographed, camera-heavy city that exists in the United States. I mean, this is there's estimates that I've heard. I don't know how much they're accurate, but if you just walk through Midtown Manhattan, you're being photographed more than 100 times. And that's something that I think is just, something where you don't expect people to come and perform this kind of clearly intended, hit that happens in America. It's the stuff of, I've been watching The Day of the Jackal, and that kind of thing.
Yeah, John Wick 5.
It's not something that you expect to see happen. What I do think, though, is that, whatever we find out in terms of the motivation, the reasoning here, clearly the online conversation around it immediately shifted to the idea that this was motivated by insurance costs and frustration with America's healthcare system. And that's something that I think, is, even if it's not actually the motivating factor, we don't know that for certain. It's certainly something that is in the realm of possibility. And that is horrifying to me. It's something that, we definitely need to address. I'm sure you've probably seen Taylor Lorenz posting the, images of other CEOs of healthcare companies. It's as if this is something to celebrate. It's awful. It's horrible. It's not something that it should be acceptable. And look, I understand Americans' frustration with the price of healthcare is certainly something that needs to be dealt with and hopefully can be within this next 4 years. But, it is absolutely awful that they would turn around and basically say these executives are just, are just people who can be targeted because of the decisions of their companies.
Yeah, putting aside the unbalanced and putting aside that there is a bell curve of craziness that has a right edge and a left edge, and focusing on healthcare in America and the arguments about it, it's never an excuse to do violence. I am curious if you think that Americans believe that healthcare is simply doomed to the inefficiencies. I mean, they're not even in Medicare yet. Welcome to Medicare, all of you out there, because that's worse than anything I've ever been in by a lot. By a lot. It's crazy. And the open season every year makes it worse. But do Americans actually expect that to change? Because it's not really. Obamacare screwed this up beyond, I think, any ability to repair it.
I completely, I wish that I could give you good news, Hugh, but I think that you're completely right. I think that Americans have basically decided that this is just the way things are and that they're never going to be fixed. And that's something that I think is really sad, horrible, and, frankly, a concession that they should not have to make. And yet the political will in order to actually have change, actually, achieve the kind of shift that we need as a country, I just don't think it necessarily exists. And in so many areas, there are, installed interests that want to prevent change because, frankly, they're making a good buck off of the situation. And that's something
quick
I
exit.
think is unacceptable.
I want Kash Patel so badly, and I don't know him. I've never met him. And I love the FBI. I worked with him in counterintelligence when I was everywhere. It's worse than during the Cold War by a lot. And that's the Bureau's number one job, in my view, not big organized crime, international crime and spying. And they're bad at it.
They're very, very bad at it, Hugh. And so hopefully, this is an administration that's going to be able to achieve the kind of, look, there's a lot of big moving parts here.
Yeah.
A lot of big things that need to be changed, and hopefully they're able to hit the ground running on it, because that's going to be something that I think is determinative in whether they're able to achieve their aims or not.
Ben Domenech, thank you. Follow him on X at B Domenech. Go get his podcast as well and watch him on Fox News. Read him at The Spectator. I'm Hugh Hewitt. I'll be right back. Once a month, I check in with Philip Balboni, founder and managing editor of GlobalPost.com, your one-stop shopping center for all the news of the world. I want to begin by reminding everyone it is free to high school and college students and their teachers. You should be reading it every day. Just go to globalpost.com. Good morning, Philip. I got a lot to cover with you. I want to talk generally about what you expect from a Trump foreign policy. But I want to ask you beforehand, I cannot give anyone a coherent answer on who to cheer for in Syria. Do you?
You want to root for the rebels, really, and bring down this awful Bashar al-Assad regime. They are responsible for 500,000 deaths. Civil war's been going on since 2011. 5 to 6 million people displaced from the country. They're in Turkey, they're in Jordan, they're in Lebanon, they're all over Europe. It was one of the things that destabilized the German government. Now, the rebels, led by this group that's had these stunning successes. They've seized Aleppo, largest city in Syria. They have taken the fourth largest city just yesterday, Hama, and they're on the way to Damascus, which is only 100 miles away. So while there are no purely good guys, if you want to take the worst one, that's Assad, the leader of Syria, for sure.
I'm going to be reading the Global Post very closely because very few Americans are following this story, and it has enormous consequences for our ally Israel and for the region. Philip, let's go big, 30,000 feet. Your thoughts on a Trump foreign policy 2.0?
I'm going to be optimistic here. I mean, the world, as we look at it here on Friday morning in early December, is a very troubled place. No matter where you go, South Korea, the crazy move by the president there, and of course the war in Ukraine. I think Trump has some big important opportunities, maybe even historic opportunities. Let's start with the Ukraine and Russia. So Russia's winning the war right now. Even the Ukrainian people are beginning to accept that they may have to negotiate a settlement, lose some of their territory. The president-elect has said that he is going to end this war quickly. I believe he probably will. And while that will have some downsides for the Ukrainian people, it will end a war that has cost 1 million casualties right in the heart of Europe. Here we are in the 21st century, and this has been going on for almost 3 years. The third anniversary is coming up in February. I think Trump has an opportunity to end the war, to negotiate something that's as fair as possible under the circumstances. That's number one. Number two, let's go to the Middle East. There's some incredibly important things happening there. I mean, obviously, there's a ceasefire in Lebanon. It's tenuous. There's a new opportunity for maybe getting a ceasefire and the return of the hostages in Gaza with Hamas. Um, Hezbollah has been greatly weakened, and Iran has been greatly weakened. Their allies, of which Syria, by the way, is one of their most important ones, is now teetering. Hezbollah is gravely damaged. Hamas is almost destroyed. Iran is much, much weaker than it was even 6 months
Why
or
are
a
you
year ago.
optimistic that Trump can get Russia-Ukraine fixed, Philip? I am too, but I want to know why you are. You're very nonpartisan, and so I'm intrigued by that. Your belief that he's going to get it done.
Well, because I mean, I that not only the president-elect but people around him have a somewhat different viewpoint of our relationship with Russia and how Trump himself views Putin. I think they don't see this as absolutely fundamental to the United States national security interest, that there could be a rapprochement with Russia. I think that's what Trump believes. I think it's what J.D. Vance believes, the vice president-elect. So I think he's going to come at it with a different mentality. And I think there's an opportunity for a major reset in Russia, U.S. and EU relations, which would reopen trade. I think a lot of the European countries are beginning to move in this direction. Nobody likes war, but sometimes war is necessary. The question is
A
this
European
war?
reset would be a wonderful thing, Philip Balboni. A European reset that we could have everyone go to their corners and work out a deal so that we do not have this prospect of escalate to de-escalate would be wonderful. What do you think he does about Xi and the Chinese Communist Party, which is the number one threat to us? To the world, yes, but to us in particular, it's China. What do you think he does there?
Well, he's going to start apparently with tariffs, which will strain the relationship further. I mean, if you look what's happened over the last, half a dozen years, we've been drifting towards China. And, our Pacific Command has been busily preparing for the possibility of conflict over Taiwan in particular. This would be the mother of all wars if we were to go to war with China. So here too, I think President-elect Trump has an opportunity to maybe cool things down a little bit. But he's going to start with the tariffs. He loves tariffs, and he's going to do it, whether it's 10% or 25% or whatever it ends up being. But I think that Trump and President Xi seem to have a good relationship in Trump's first administration. So maybe we'll see some personal diplomacy here from, but there's no doubt.
Philip, I don't think Donald Trump is afraid of anything. Whether he ought to be is a different question, but I don't think he's afraid of Xi or of Putin or of North Korea. I just don't think he's afraid of anyone. That is actually a useful attitude to bring to a table when you're dealing with the number one threat to world peace, Xi Jinping. I think it's a wonderful attitude, which is, hi, Xi, I'm Donald Trump, and you do not intimidate me. Sort of the opposite of Tony Blinken and Jake Sullivan in Alaska in the first meeting between American and Chinese officials under Biden.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I mean, I think when you're dealing at these highest levels, you have to bring a sense of real confidence about your own power, and we have a lot of power. So I think that would be Trump's perspective. I don't think he is afraid of anyone. I think, however, that war with China is not in the interest of the United States or anyone else for that matter, and I think it can be avoided. Let's hope.
I do too, and I don't mind tariffs on China to get Americans to decouple from China, but I also really care about getting AUKUS strengthened, getting submarine technology and finished boats to our Australian friends, getting Vietnam maybe to allow us to make port calls there, and stopping the global road and belt initiative, at least in Peru. Do you think we will be able to pull that off? Team Biden is just absent from the scene. I don't know what Jake Sullivan was thinking, but the world is in, there's a vacuum. We're not there. How long will it take Trump to empty the vacuum and replace it with American power?
Well, if we're talking about the entire world, it's going to take probably his entire 4 years. But he has to pick his spots, and I think the Belt and Road is beginning to peter out anyway. But the Chinese have been very strategic. They've been building ports, in Sri Lanka and in Cambodia,
Peru,
in Peru and any other place they can, to begin to circle, the United States West Coast at least. So I think it's going to take a lot of work.
Phil, have you ever read the book by Arthur Herman called To Rule the Waves? It's a history of the British Empire. It's a one-volume history of the British Empire. I think it's Arthur's best book. And what the Brits did when they put their colonies out, they were just finding coaling stations for their fleet. I think China's just creating the same thing for their fleet, which is already bigger than our fleet, but not blue water yet.
Right. I mean, they have a lot of ships. They have a lot of coastal ships. They are really making sure that the South China Sea, which they consider to be basically their private property, is something that they can control. The Straits of Malacca, which is a key passageway for trade, international shipping, that they can control this in the event of conflict. There's a lot to be concerned about. I think the head of the Pacific Command, probably doesn't have a lot of easy sleeping nights, worrying about all the things that he has to take care of. Should there be
Admiral Paparo, though, is at least he's really great. I hope he ends up being the CNO after this tour, and I hope this tour ends peacefully. Phil, let's close Philip Balboni by telling people about Global Post and how a student or a teacher can get it for free.
Sure. So our newsletter just covers the world. That's all we write about. No U.S. politics. As you mentioned, we're nonpartisan. So anybody can just go to globalpost.com, sign up for a subscription. But I work with students, both high school, college, and homeschool, is entirely free. Also teachers, entirely free. Right there, when you go to the website, you'll see Global Education. And it's very easy for students and teachers to sign up. We love doing this work, Hugh. I know you realize that. Helping young people be better informed about the world that we live in is critically important. You cannot grow up in America in 2024 and not know what's happening around the world. It's really important. And
it's essential. It's not dumbed down, but it comes with the best illustrations in the world of newsletters so that you get an idea of what's going on in the world. Go to Global Post and find the teacher-student button. Philip Balboni, always a pleasure. Thank you, Philip. I have one message for everyone. Do not believe the Beltway gossip, sheets, or industry. Every morning, if you live in the Beltway, a half dozen emails appear in your inbox. They are the free teasers, so you sign up for more gossip. And that's what it is. It's gossip. It's people talking to staffers who don't know about events and issues over which they have no control and into which they have no visibility. Susie Wiles is not talking to Axios or Punchbowl or Politico. Susie Wiles and President-elect Trump have no use for anybody in Washington media corps. The former and future president does have some people that he does talk to on a regular basis, and I tend to read Maggie Haberman for that reason. But I am never certain if what she is reporting comes from the president-elect, who does talk to her, or not. I do read Maggie. I do read Jonathan Swan. I do not read Axios, Politico, or Punchbowl for their gossip about who Trump likes and who he doesn't like, and it's perfectly encapsulated in the Hegseth debate. Ben Domenech talks to senators. I talk to senators. I think it's a jump ball on Pete, and I'm feeling better about it today than I did yesterday, that he's going to get 53 votes. But I know that hearing is going to be a bloodletting, simply awful. And the person that Pete needs to talk to isn't the president. The president will stand behind him. He needs to talk to Mrs. Hegseth about whether she wants to go through this, because it will make what Brett Kavanaugh's hearing was, because Brett Kavanaugh's hearing was based on a lie by a political opponent. It still turned into a circus that almost destroyed a good and very, very competent justice. I don't know what Pete's going to happen, because like other people who turn their lives around, and not unlike a number of veterans who experienced war, Pete did drink a little bit when he got back, and he's admitted that. And Kevin Kramer came out and said he had the commitment not to do it. Do not read what Beltway know-nothings are quoting other Beltway know-nothings saying about any nominee, whether it's Kash Patel or Pete Hegseth. Just don't believe it. They don't know. Classic old saying. Those that know aren't talking. Those who are talking don't know. And I don't know what the whip count is. Donald Trump does, Pete Hegseth does, and they know what they're up against. But don't believe the gossip sheets. I do not count, by the way, Global Post as a gossip sheet. It's about the world. It's about stuff that's actually happening. That's why I read it. News items, which is the last thing I read before going on the air, is hard news from around the world. For example, this morning about where are the Syrian militant ISIS-like Al-Qaeda offshoot, where are they on the road to Damascus? How close are they? And you just heard Philip Balboni say 100 miles. Maybe that's true, maybe it's not. I don't know. But what I do know is that the Beltway gossip sheets do not know the future. They don't. Do not read them. Do not believe them. Turn off any show that purports to tell you what a staffer told them about X, Y, and Z, because they just don't know. They don't know. And they shouldn't pretend that they do know. Let me close this hour. We're coming up the Hillsdale Dialogue. Dr. Arnn and I are really excited about reconciliation and the changes ahead. Dr. Bhattacharya, all that good stuff. We'll talk about it. But I want to remind you about Angel Tree, because your $30 can change a life. Angel Tree is a Ministry of Prison Fellowship. Every year at this time, they do two things. They do summer camp, and they do Angel Tree Christmas time presents, because it is a way to connect mom and dad, one or both of whom are behind bars, with one of their kids. And they do it in a way that is so unique. They have a list of kids. They serve as many of them as they can. They talk to the children about what they would like. They talk to the prisoner about what they would like. They buy let's just say it's a football, a basketball, a Barbie, whatever it is. They talk to the prisoner. The prisoner says, let's go with Barbie. And dad writes to his little girl a note. I love you. I'm thinking about you on Christmas. Thank you for all the love you give me, though I can't be there with you. And child and parent connect over Christmas. And Angel Tree is in there, providing not just the present and the note and the logistics. They provide a youth Bible, the kind of Bible that kids like. It's not going to be one of the grown-up cross-tab things that my pastor Larry reads and revels in. It's not going to be the ancient Greek. It's a kid's Bible, and a connection to an adult who will love them unconditionally, like the parent who can't be there. And Angel Tree has probably saved more children from the recidivism that is inherited from parents often in the cycle than any other organization out there. So before you go Christmas shopping this weekend, please go to HughHewitt.com and find the banner. You cannot miss it. I think the Steelers fans have found it. I'm saying only nice things about Steelers fans since they elected Donald Trump and David McCormick. But please be generous, $30 per child, 10 children taken care of with a $300 contribution. The banner is at HughHewitt.com. It's the best way to give. It's completely secure. Thank you for doing that.